you. Tony Keith will be followed by Larry Montenegro.
Thank you, supervisors. Tony Keith with Green Road. We provide consulting services to the cannabis industry. By now, we are all far beyond debating whether or not cannabis is a viable and accepted agricultural crop, not only in this county, but in the state. And what we really have to do now is make sure that we don't put our thumb on the scale and tilt that scale unnecessarily for various reasons. You know, we're here because we believe in sound planning. This industry believes in sound planning, and I know that your board does, and that's what's important, that we use sound planning practices to do the right thing. Because the minute you put a limit on, well, then later on you got to come in and put some pressure over here. And then you really don't have a free market. So if you are vested in a free market, and if you are not trying to unnecessarily create limits, focus on sound planning. That will do you a service, it will do the members of this industry a service, and it'll do every person in this county a service. And it will not deny the rights of the voters that 57% in this county said we want safe, fair, and legal access to cannabis. It's not up to me to decide what that is, and it's not up to you to decide. It is what the voters said they want, and it's up to us to all accommodate that. And so, with enthusiasm, I hope you embrace that. I hope you give staff the freedom to address what they know. You've got some very talented staff at this county that wants to do the right thing. It's a challenge to them. Let them do it with your guidance, but that's what we really need to do. We need to have a free and fair and unrestrained market where there are false limits put in, and a cap would do that. Lastly, I'd like to talk about agriculture. This is agriculture, and we need not to limit that. We need to let agriculture do what agriculture does, which is produce a product and produce it fairly. We allow wineries to bring in product from other locations that are not grown on their site, and they process that on those winery sites. So we need to have one license type of each for each cannabis license permit so that they can grow, process, and do all of the things that are allowed under the AUMA and now the reconciled bill that we have from the state. And I would encourage that you have staff really follow up on that trailer bill and look at what is in there and bring those things forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Larry Montenegro will be followed by Deborah Cauldwell.
Yes, hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Larry Montenegro from California Valley. This industry has brought a lot of work, a lot of opportunities for different businesses out there, and it would be a shame to shut it down and go back to the same old routine where there's nothing out there. I was kind of noticing that you guys are kind of excluding us because we have residential suburban, but we have the solar farm out there, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they weren't affected by this rule, so it seems kind of something to throw out there. And also the water issue, there seems to be a lot of concern with it, but we have neighbors that have grapes, that have olive trees, that they take millions and millions of gallons of water on a daily basis. We're only using probably about 15,000, 20,000 gallons per day. It's not even near what the rest of the industry is using. It seems to be like we've been targeted for some unknown reason, or maybe we know it, but we just don't want to say it. And so another issue that we have is we have the fishing game. They're, kind of going out there, looking into our pastures and everything, concerned with the endangered species. They have a total of 82,000 acres around the vicinity where they can probably house their concerned species. We're only using about 175 acres of land on the whole Carrizo Plains, California Valley. California Valley has a total of 6,700 acres. That's it. The fishing game has unlimited access, resources, you name it. I'm just curious to see why they're picking on the little guy that has 2.5 acres. Why are they coming down and stomping on us? They have plenty of space to deal with. Another one of the issues here is that if you guys, ban all the growing in California Valley, all those growers, they're thinking about moving into the Nipomo area. I don't know how you guys feel about having that much pot in one spot, especially out here in Nipomo or San Luis Obispo areas where it's closer to the population, it's harder to handle. So I was just gonna mention that the solar farm, before they got it started, they did a study, and they said that there was enough water to support 250,000 gallons per day without disturbing our water wells. So as you see, 250,000 gallons is a big difference than 15,000 to 20,000 gallons a day. And we're only doing it for 6 months. We're not draining the aqueduct the whole entire year. It has time to replenish water. This year we had a lot of water, a lot of rain out there. So I think we need to rethink our strategy as far as jobs. This thing is bringing jobs. That's what we need out there.
Thank you
very much.
Deborah Cauldwell will be followed by Dave Hacker.
Good afternoon, Board. Thank you for having us. My name is Deborah Cauldwell, and along with my husband, Bruce Wright, we're the owners of Tropicana Sungrown, and we're a soil-to-bottle, non-psychoactive topical cannabis company. 95% of our sales are in the Northern California region in the brick and mortar. We are currently playing by the rules. We're permitted cannabis cultivation here on the North County. What I want to address most is the cap that we have. 100 farms in an agricultural community vested in history of Cal Poly this is their home, saying that we're not going to let this new burgeoning industry grow, maybe helping some of our historic ranchers save their ranch or something. It's very important that we keep our mind open as an agricultural area to allow these new farms and these new permits to be allowed so that we can grow this industry to create jobs for this actual area. I feel like 100 is not enough to suit. Not only it doesn't cover the initial group of us that took a risk and applied for permits last year with the unknown of what was going to happen to us. So I think we need to either revisit the number, but I think my recommendation would be not to have any number, but to have criteria for applications that would limit undesirable use of permits. The other is the distribution of those permits. I think it would be difficult to base it on a business plan. Some of the artisan producers aren't in the big numbers. And if you were to limit the distribution of permits based on a business plan that had projected large numbers, it might leave some of our small artisan producers who are currently in business, and a business is growing every year, limit us to what we can do in the future. I am not been in the agricultural field prior to cannabis. My background is kinesiology. I'm a Cal Poly graduate. My husband is a Cal Poly graduate with a bachelor's and master's in agriculture. He's been mowing lawns for the last 35 years, and finally he's using his education for producing award-winning cannabis products that are tested for molds, potency, contaminants. We're making differences in people's lives throughout the state of California. I don't want to see our county left behind. We could make a difference. The rest of the state doesn't want to talk about it, but our state has superior climate for growing cannabis. We could lead the state in cannabis tourism and acknowledging the appellations, which will bring more tourism to our area. And I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dave Hacker will be followed by Mathew O Connor.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Supervisors. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Dave Hacker. I'm with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And for us, this issue is all about location. It could be cannabis or cotton, but our concern here is the location where we have sensitive species. And for us, this is really the Carrizo Plains in this county. And in particular, the California Valley subdivision. It has the Carrizo Plain has the highest concentration of listed species in the lower 48 states, and we think it's a sound land use planning decision to direct new cultivation away from that area for that reason. So my department is here to express our support for the ordinance, that part of the ordinance which does just that, and proposes banning cultivation of cannabis in the Carrizo Plain planning area, or the Carrizo planning area rather. We've seen a lot of direct impacts to the animals themselves and loss of habitat from the cultivation that has occurred out there over the last couple of years. And we think that that's a perfect example of sort of a pilot project that we can look at and to see whether it's compatible with the resources that are out there. So again, would just like to encourage retaining that part of the ordinance that proposes growing elsewhere so that we can avoid those constraints that are out there, the biological constraints and those conflicts and the need for mitigation in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mathew O Connor will be followed by Marie Roth.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Matt O'Connor, and I'm a former senior energy consultant of a solar company called Solplicity down in Burbank. And I would like to offer some comparisons I see in the energy or solar industry and the cannabis industry. As we know, with the electricity lines, they are all districted to certain companies, so they have full rights to use an electricity line. And that creates very powerful, wealthy companies that have ability to lobby and ultimately do what they want with the environment that they own. So we've seen, several power lines created both above and below the ground. We've seen lots of mining. We've seen dumping of the soil, erosion, water contamination, because there was only a few players in the electricity industry. Now, thankfully, we've seen changes in this industry recently where now solar companies are allowed to actually come in and partner up with these companies using reimbursements from our government. Now, I see that as a very good lesson for the cannabis industry regarding the cap rule, because if we decide to create several caps, we are ultimately directing all the money towards certain players, and those are going to be few players that are going to be able to form the same powers that electric companies did. So, for example, when I run out of battery on my phone, I'm going to have to go home and charge it, but I'm not going to be able to choose which electric company I'm getting that power from. So ultimately, I'm having to comply with all the environmental degradation that is occurring to form that electricity. Now, that's the same thing when you're looking at a consumable product like cannabis. Just like the electricity, that person's going to run out and have to get more. And having other avenues where they can get that product produces competition. So in our food markets, you see that perhaps, when I'm making my phone calls, I can call a pizza company and I can call perhaps 10 different locations to order a pizza for a delivery right here, per se. And now those companies all have an incentive to make a healthier pizza. You see companies cutting down how much fat's in their pizza, people offering organic ingredients, more vegetable selections that draws in customers. And ultimately that competition is going to help, the health effects and the environmental effects of the industry as a whole. So I'd like to introduce that comparison and ask that the board does look at the comparisons between what's happened historically in the electric and energy companies versus what we have the opportunity to prevent and set up for the cannabis industry. Thank you.